Here's a quick observation I would like to share with you when it comes to mitered corners, stair treads that join at a 90-degree angle. And that would be the fact that the lumber can shrink, it can expand. Remember, wood expands when it is wet and it shrinks when it dries out. If you have wood, you're going to be using wood for something like this that has 10% moisture in it, let's say, and it dries out, the lumber's going to shrink, you're going to end up with a gap. I have seen this too many times. I built a few stairs like this and quite frankly would try to avoid building them ever again just because of this situation here. Now, it's not uncommon for the wood to shrink, and you can see where the gaps are different. Here we got a wide gap here and it's tight in the front. And then here we have a gap that's almost equal. Same thing over here. And it's hard to actually tell whether or not the lumber is warping. This is another problem that you end up with. As the lumber warps in one direction, let's say that it's lower here but higher here, and then over here it's higher here and lower here, you end up with these variations that could cause little trip hazards. So a quarter of an inch in height could catch somebody's heel, could catch their shoelace. I've seen it happen before, heard about it. So not always going to be a good thing. Main point that I'm making in the video is that I would just like you to think about the materials you use, or the fact that you could simply redesign the stairway to eliminate this problem in the future. And it does. It's frustrating. I built a nice stairway like this for a spa. It went up to a spa, and I built it all out of redwood, and it looked nice when I was done. Within a year, it looked horrible, and a lot of it had to do with the lumber bowing, twisting, and the gaps in the miters. Now, it didn't just I had multiple miters. It wasn't just one corner. I think the corners went all the way around the spa, and it just didn't look good. Within 5 years, it was something we were tearing out. Just a redesign idea, you could actually have the ramp come all the way over. You just have one ramp going up, and then you would have a wall over here, handrail, something like that, or a wall. If the ramp went all the way over, you would have a wall that would go at the same height as the ramp, up 42 inches, something like that. You could have the stairs coming down straight here, eliminate this, again have a guardrail here, and then have a guardrail coming down here at an angle. And then, of course, a grippable handrail would be nice. You don't see a grippable handrail for the handicap access or the stairway here. So I think you could actually redesign something. If this is something you really want, maybe you could use composite materials that aren't going to shrink or expand when wet. It might have a little better wear and tear than regular lumber. Douglas fir, something like that. Redwood and cedar, this is softer wood. You know, it looks nice, but sometimes it doesn't always work well because it is softer for stairs and landings. So anyway, that's it for this video. Don't forget to watch more of our videos to increase your knowledge about stair building and design so that you don't end up with something like this and regret it in the future.
In this video, I will provide you with another project that you might be able to build without a lot of complicated math or calculations. And we're simply going to have a deck with 3 steps. And the beauty of this is that you're going to be able to use 2x6 or 2x8. However, with this design, we might have a problem with the building code that requires a 4-inch sphere or a round ball to not be allowed to travel through any part of the stairway. And we're going to be at 4 inches here. If I have a 2x6 and then I put an 1.5 inch thick decking board on top of that, I'm going to be right at 4 inches. And if I use 2x8 for something like this, I'm going to be over 4 inches. And I'm also creating this design here to sit on top of soil. And I'm not about to suggest that these bottom boards won't rot. And I will leave it up to you if you need to make further modifications to this to meet local building codes or work in your area. Another good thing about this design is that we are not going to have any mitered corners. Everything is going to be a 90-degree angle. And that's going to make this project a lot easier to build also. And to calculate the lengths of the boards we're going to use for the smaller stringers, all we need to do is draw a straight line down here and then measure each one of the boards from that straight line. And that's going to give us the length of each board for these smaller stringers. So in other words, this board right here will be the same length as this board. This board here going back to the line will be the same as this one here. And I know that might seem confusing, but let's go ahead and motor on and continue with our tour here. Don't forget you can stop the video at any time. And of course, watch the video again if you miss something or if something isn't quite making sense. And don't forget that you can modify this design, like I mentioned earlier, by installing additional bracing, blocking, and structural supports. And you can connect each one of the 2x6s together with building hardware like straps or flat framing anchors, even blocks. Just make sure that you install some of these framing anchors on each side. If I was just going to install all of these framing anchors on this side, along with the straps, then it might allow the 2x6s to fold over at the breaks or where the 2x6s are going to be connecting to the other 2x6s. So we're going to need to install some type of support bracing on both sides. And another idea might be to use a block. And if you put the block in between two boards here and then attach it with screws or nails, something like this here on both sides, then you might be able to use that instead of something like this. And you might even be able to use dowels to fasten these together. And don't forget to check out other types of framing hardware that you can use to create stronger stair stringers. And to figure out this length here, we're simply going to lay out some of our decking boards until we get the desired width that we want. If you want to cut one of these in half or cut it down to create a specific shape, then go ahead and do that. I'm not doing that. This deck, to meet most building codes, needs to be 36 inches long or 36 inches wide here. And to get that, I think 36 inches is right about here. I made it a little bit longer. You can't make it shorter, but you can make it longer. And if we use this method here, we're going to be able to create a deck that doesn't have shorter boards in it. Our deck's going to look nicer, at least in my opinion. And we're going to do the same thing with our stair steps. 2 steps with a 2x6 is going to give us about an 11-inch wide step. And it's going to be important to keep all of our stair steps the same width or depth going in both directions. So if you can see here, we're just simply raising this step up here. And I'm going to do the same thing with this step here. And finally with our last step here. If you notice, I've created a flat section here. And we're going to use each section here to calculate the lengths of our decking and stringer boards. And this is the beauty of this right here. This really makes your job easy. And make sure that you figure out the width and the depth of the deck before you get started. So in other words, you might not need to cut any of these boards. For example, if I had 10-foot 2x6, I could lay the 10-foot 2x6 next to each other, put the desired gap in between each board if I'm going to have a gap in between each board, and then grab my measuring tape and measure the distance. And if I want to make this distance here the same as this distance here, so that both the width and the length or the depth of the deck will be the same size, then I can do that. And it wouldn't be that difficult to lay out your boards in this direction here with the desired gaps if you're going to have them, and have them run full length to get these measurements here. So the measurement for this board right here is going to be the measurement from right here to right here. The measurement for this board right here, this step, this 2x6, the second one down, is going to be measured from right here to right here. And this board here is going to be the measurement from the front of this right here all the way to the back. And you guessed it, this measurement here all the way from this point to this point is going to be the measurement of our bottom board. And now would be a good time to point out that the bottom board will need to be ripped down and made a little bit shorter. What you're going to do is take the height of the decking 2x6, we're going to have 1.5 inch thick 2x6. We're going to subtract 1.5 inches off of the bottom board. So if we have a 5.5 inch wide 2x6, we're going to rip that down to where it's 4 inches wide. And that's going to allow you to make each riser height the same size. So again, these lower boards, all of them are going to be 1.5 inches shorter if we're using 1.5 inch decking. If I'm using 2 inch thick decking, then I'm going to subtract 2 inches off of my 2x6. And I won't be going into a lot of detail about that in this video. However, I do have plenty of other videos at our website. Make sure you check them out if that doesn't make sense. And in our design here, these are not going to be the same size because the width of this is shorter than the length. And you can see it right here. If I wanted to make this length here the same as this length here, then I would need to cut these boards a little shorter. For example, if I have 3 foot 3 1/4 inches as a measurement from here to here, I've figured out how many decking boards I'm going to need according to my local building code. Got to be bigger than 3 foot. Then the same is going to hold true for the width. I could simply cut these boards here 3 foot 3 1/4 inches to create a square landing, or a landing with the same measurement for the width as it would be for the depth. And that's going to change the measurement of some of our boards. And I could always make this 4 foot wide and this 4 foot long also, if it's going to work with our decking. In this video, I am going to provide you with another idea, an alternative to the standard miter on a set of stairs. And obviously this would be something you would use more for an exterior application, maybe a deck. And I don't really know how this would work with any of the engineered materials that aren't actually solid wood. Probably not going to work for that. But you could always just simply cut a notch out of each side of the board and hope that no water sits in this area, but that's not going to be the case on an exterior stairway. So maybe you might want to drill a couple of holes to allow for any water that does enter into these areas to drain out safely. But this seems like a good idea. I've never done it before. If you do it, let us know how it works out. You can email me some pictures if you want. But the trick for stuff like this, and this is the problem that a lot of people don't pay attention to on YouTube. And that's the fact that you get to see something. I see people do it all the time on YouTube, and they build something that I got a pretty good idea it's not going to last. But they build it, and then everybody thumbs up the video. It goes to the top. And then that exposes it to more applications for people that are going to do it. And it is hard to find. I know a lot of people ask me, have I ever built stairs before? Because I've kind of gotten pretty good at doing the drawing here. And yes, I've built over 1,000 sets of stairs, different types. And I got a pretty good idea of what will work and won't work by doing the repairs on quite a few projects also. Now let's take a look at a couple of more applications here. You can take and run both of the boards forward like this. And that means that you would have one on the bottom here. Instead of having them both on the same side, you would simply have one on the other side and one on this side. Again, just kind of throwing out some ideas. Here are the notches. Instead of the holes, you could drill some notches in here. Now, if you cut the notches in, and then you fill this with some type of a sealant or adhesive, don't even bother. It doesn't make any sense to cut the notches in. If you're just going to run a bead here, maybe a bead here, something like that, yeah, that might be fine. But, the idea of the notches is to get the water out of there as soon as possible, maybe get some airflow in. And you could always put the notches on the other side. You could have the notches running in the other direction also. So again, just some ideas throwing out there. So this would be the standard one here. The other design we looked at where both boards are on the same side. This one here, it's on the other side. And of course the different look here. 2 on this side, a longer one here, and this one instead of this one. So If one looks better, go for it. And again, if you could mix these around somehow and come up with another idea that you like, go for that also. Now here's the standard miter. I can't tell you how many jobs. To be honest with you, I've never came to a job ever. And you might have it. Fine, I got it. I never have seen it to where the lumber hasn't expanded or contracted enough to create a gap here. Now, you can. I don't really want. I've never seen it in person, but I have actually seen projects where they've used certain hardwoods, and that might actually work for you instead of using construction standard lumber. Keep that in mind. So the last thing we want to do is get pigeonholed, and we always seem to. It's the reason why I put more ideas in my videos. I could have just left this one alone with the first section and didn't provide you with any of this, but sometimes people can come in and say, hey, wait a minute, I like the notch idea. Doesn't have to go all the way through. I'm going to stop it in the middle. Something like that might work better for you. But here's a smaller notch. And, if you don't want to take the big hunk out of it, but this is going to, you're going to on the back. Since it is on the back, it's not going to be as big of a problem. Because when you go to cut the other board, you could simply cut through and then pop it out. No one's going to be able to see it, but you are going to have a different type of cut. It's not just going to be a straight through cut like this one here when you go to cut this board out. So that's it for the video. And for those of you who have been around my channel long enough, you know the drill. Hit the thumbs up button if you feel like it, and leave any comments in the comment area. Questions I will answer as soon as possible. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, let us know by hitting the thumbs up button or letting us know in the comment area.